This episode of After Sex Ed is brought to you by Beducated, the Netflix of sexual wellness. Elevate your sexual happiness, intimacy, experiment, and deepen your connection with yourself and your partner today. Use the coupon code AFTERSEXED to get 65% off of the yearly pass and have access to all of the Beducated courses for 1 day for free. The After Sex Ed discount will be locked in for life. Click on the link to get it now, and thanks for tuning in. Hi, everyone. Welcome to After Sex Ed. I'm very excited about my guest today. This is Angel, who is one of the founding members of Aspect. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is in a bit. But Angel was also a guest lecturer in my program. And a lot of you know that I'm studying sexual health in graduate school. And Angel and her partner, business partner and romantic partner, business partner? Yeah, both. Okay.
Their partner.
Yeah, their partner. Forgive me. Sorry. Led the lecture on BDSM and kink, and it was amazing. And I learned so much, and I thought I have to have them here like ASAP. Before I get started, I want to say that this episode is brought to you by Beducated. And they are the Netflix of sexual wellness, as you know. I did a TikTok recently on aftercare. And we're going to talk to Angel about aftercare, because what I learned in my program from you, Angel, I saw there was tons of parallel, tons of crossover in Beducated's aftercare course. And like you piqued my interest in it first, and then they kind of like compounded. They've got tons of great BDSM stuff on the site as well. But anyways, let's get into it. Thanks for being here.
Hey, I'm so thrilled to be here, honestly. I actually follow you on TikTok.
Oh, great.
So
thank you.
I was pretty excited when I saw your name on the request for certificates, because I was like, I think I know this person.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding. Oh my God.
No.
So Angel's referring to the certificate that Aspect gives out that I have received. I am a kink-aware professional.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah. So do you want to talk about Aspect, what it stands for? And probably people are going to want to know if they can also be kink-aware professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope we get more and more kink-aware professionals. I'm going to turn you on to another professional certification that you should go and get. But Aspect stands for, right now, we're changing because we're no longer just in Alberta, but it's Alberta Sex Positive Education and Community Center. It will be advocating, right, rather than Alberta, advocating for sex positive education and consent culture.
Beautiful.
We've moved everything online, and that opened us up. Like, we actually have folks attending from all over the world. And what we do is promote sex positive values, and that means anything that helps people to have sexual empowerment that is strongly founded in the affirmative consent model, and has a social justice awareness to it. Because if we're going to talk about consent, we're going to talk about sexual violence, which means we have to look further than just this whole patriarchal model. We need to look at the kyriarchy, because trans women of color have a life expectancy of under 30.
Wow.
And that's unacceptable.
What is that word you just used? I don't even think I've heard it before. Kyriarchy?
Kyriarchy.
Spell it?
Oh, yeah. Ask the dyslexic person to spell it. K-Y. It's like patriarchy, but it's K-Y-R Kyrie-I-A.
Okay.
But yeah, it just refers to looking at ableism and racism and even classism, and like how this all filters in order to protect this very small group of people and the resources that they're hoarding. So it's a real anti-capitalist sort of idea, but it's really important when we're exploring sex positivity to look at that. And as somebody who's very white, referring to me, from a long line of very white people, that was like a learning curve that I think I will be on that journey every day for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's lifelong.
It is. And decolonizing your thoughts is really important part of sex positivity, because sex negativity, it comes with that colonization, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yes. That's, see, like, I get so much shit and so much flack on TikTok for when I talk about sex. It gets political sometimes. It's so hard not to. If you want to have nuanced discussion about sex and power, you're going to go there. You're just going to go there. You're going to start talking about the patriarchy. You're going to start talking about politics. Anyways, but I want to jump into all that. But I'm going to start by asking you what I ask everybody. And I'm really curious because you are a very sex positive person and you started this fantastic organization. But I want to know how you learned about sex. When were you first exposed to it? Or how didn't you learn?
Yeah. So it's actually kind of interesting because I'm older and some things were just talked about. So I actually learned more about spanking growing up, like erotic spankings, because it was in the movies all the time.
Wow.
Like Elvis spanked Priscilla and Lucy was always getting threatened with spankings. And some of the really old, like sort of Britishy movies, that my grandparents would watch, it'd be like, they'd toss their wife or fiance or whatever over their knee, and she'd be like, "Oh no!" Right? And that was so. I was actually really surprised in my adulthood that more people weren't incorporating erotic spanking into their relationships.
Yeah.
Sex, however, I learned about mostly in school, and then from trial and error.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't think I really started learning about sex until I decided to educate myself in order to make sure that my children had access to better information. And learning alongside your preteens is incredible. I just have to tell you. Yeah.
I almost want to phrase the question like, when did you unlearn things about sex? It would
Still doing it every day.
Yeah. Because I have those moments are a lot more like I can remember like, oh, that's not how that goes, or like, oh, I enjoy looking at all kinds of different porn. What's with me? Like, you know what I mean? And thinking like, maybe there's nothing wrong with me, So
even when we recorded the content for the U of A, I think I was still operating under the assumption that I was straight.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought when I was hanging out with the first person with a vagina that I officially dated, I thought I was having hot flashes, and it was my very masculine partner who said, "You only have them when she's in the room." Right?
Wow.
And it's like, oh, that's really interesting. And, and then he was pointing out like all these other instances where I've demonstrated that I'm attracted to feminine presenting people and androgynous people in particular. Feminine androgyny is just like, it's just a thing for me. Yeah. And even after I was dating her, like we were all dating and we went to like, it's called the Imperial Court of the Wild Rose. They're our like queer drag organization. We went to one of their fundraisers and they were like, if you're here as an ally, raise your hand. And I'm like, she's like, the fuck are you doing? I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Like
But why? Because... Sorry, go on.
You're not an ally if you're queer.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought you meant.
Straight people are the allies.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's so funny. Like,
oh. She's like, what the fuck? And it was one of those, oh shit, like I'm still unlearning the scripts I was taught about sex, about sexuality, about gender, about pleasure, about relationships, really, and certainly about consent.
Yeah. Oh, don't you think we should all be learning about consent constantly through our lives? Like, I'm so grateful to this course. Like, I think I always understood the concept of it. Anyways, but when I talk about this course and the things that I learned with people that are not in it, and sometimes I forget that I am surrounded by sex all the time, that not everyone lives that way, and that like some people don't talk about sex the way that we do
ever. Some people don't talk about sex ever, even with the people they're doing it with, and that just breaks my heart because half of the intimacy comes from those connections, and and that's really what got me into kink in the first place, was that it's so consensual and communicative, and you're supposed to talk about it. Yeah. And even then I thought I was super sex positive, and I had to unlearn a lot of really unhealthy ideas about human beings and how we relate.
Okay, let's jump into BDSM, because I'm seeing this as a BDSM kind of for beginners thing, and like what people should know, and some of the things they need to unlearn about it. So you practice it. Yes.
I do.
You enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fuck yes. Or are you allowed to say fuck on your podcast?
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine. I do. Yeah, no, I don't censor people here. I guess I want to start by saying, like, so it's bondage, domination, submission, sadomasochism.
You're close.
I saw. You know how many different definitions I saw online? Okay, say what it is.
It's because when we're looking at BDSM, we typically, when we have like a word set up like that, we think there's one word for each letter.
Yeah.
But with BDSM, there's actually some overlap. So B is for bondage. Yeah. D is for discipline.
Excuse me. Yeah.
ES is for dominance and submission. And SM is for sadomasochism.
Oh, gotcha. See, I already failed. Don't take my certificate away.
But language evolves, right? Yeah. And I think this is one of the things that's really confusing for people when they get online and they look at stuff is, one, you might be coming across stuff that's more based on porn culture, on non-consensual culture, and you might be coming across stuff that's based on people who are actually doing the things in their lives, right? Mm-hmm. Like in their actual lives, not just some person they picked up and surprised, like our little serial rapist there. What's his name from Q?
From Q,
the Ontario radio station there. That pretended he was. I can't remember. Gameshi.
Yeah.
And hey, Gameshi, if you're listening, that's how unimportant you are. Like, we struggle to remember your name, but like he used it as an excuse, and that's like a totally different aspect. And even in the established kink community, you're going to find that, right? There's people who are operating from a very strict rule following of ethics, and then there's people who aren't, and all shades and in between there.
My initial reaction, and here I am, I'm a sex positive person. I was like, ooh, like I was like getting a little scared. What do I know about it? I know 50 Shades of Grey. Like, that's really it. I know about like leather and whips. Pardon?
We call it 50 Shades of Don't.
Yeah, exactly. And that, see, but like online, like of course with my TikTok and I'm immersed in sex positivity. I always read about it. There is a lot of confusion, and it breaks my heart. Yeah. Because I don't think I believed this even before this unit. I know that I didn't believe it, but there's a lot of confusion between, like, if somebody's into BDSM, like, they like being beaten up and thrown around, so why are they complaining, like, rape is just going to happen to you? And that is absolutely false. There is a big difference. I know this, and I think lots of people can conceptually get this, that there's a big difference between sexual domination and sexual abuse. My God, the difference is consent. Like, and explain to me, I guess, like, or explain to people, like, how BDSM does not operate that way. Like, consent is paramount. Yeah.
And so, like, if you're in a relationship right now and you're listening to this and I say anything that makes you go, oh my God, I'm assaulting my partner, or my partner's assaulting me, like, remember that you can only make choices on the information you have in the moment. So try to have review compassion, right? Like when you're looking in the review mirror, have compassion and understand that, things have changed. We have these consent conversations now. But when we're talking about a BDSM framework, right? Like a strict, based on the original Safe, Sane, Consensual by Peter Stein, go read his paper. It was pretty awesome for its time. Or if we're looking at RAC, PRIC, like whatever acronym you're following, consent is in there. And that means that you don't engage in things without first enthusiastically agreeing to do the thing and knowing what you're agreeing to. Right. So even if I was like, hey, I'm a professional rope suspension person, come over here and get tied up, and I hurt you, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have your consent because I am not a professional rope suspension person. And, so that honesty has to be there, that risk awareness. What are we doing to mitigate the risk? That's all part of the conversation. And then there has to be a way to make sure it's ongoing. So therefore, safe words or signals or, things you can communicate really quickly to let the other person know what's going on. And then on top of that, consent is there after. So they're taking care of each other. You're not just using each other and walking away, unless that's your kink, and no shame in here.
I know.
So you actually talk about how you need things to end, right?
Yeah.
So not just, ooh, I'd like to have wild, kinky sex with you, but after we do the wild, kinky sex things, then what? Right? Like, do you need me to check in 2 days? Do you need to hang out for an hour after? Do you need me to coddle you? Do I need the coddling, right? So, and that's okay. Like, whatever you need to be healthy and happy after, you have the right to ask for. And so I look at that lens and I'm like, we don't even use that in sex in our society. And therefore, even what we think typically in society is consensual sex isn't meeting that bare minimum standard that I hold for what consent looks like. But so that's the big difference. And that's what I tell people. If someone's telling you you're not allowed to have boundaries, or that because you're their submissive, you've got to do anything they tell you, and their word's law, or that they're going to take your boundaries and help you adjust them, they're not operating on a consent frame.
So what I'm hearing, like, if you're a novice, if you're like, I guess in my mind, I'm picturing a person that's like, I have some interest in it, don't know how to bring it up to my partner, or I don't have a partner right now. I'd like to join a community. I'd like to join something. I just want to do this right. Like, and I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. I'm afraid I'm going to hurt somebody. Like, what I'm hearing is set clear boundaries right away, up front.
Absolutely. And I won't lie to you. Like, you're going to get pushback from some people, and we like to call them Uber Doms. Whether they're male or female or in-betweeners. We call them Uber Doms because they think you shouldn't have boundaries if you're submissive. And if you're the kind of person getting into it because you want to take away someone's boundaries, you need to sit with that. Like, sit and think about that, right? And look at that. And there's counseling for that. I mean, I've just finished the Masters of Counseling program, and I can tell you, we can help you figure out why you need to abuse others. But set boundaries. And sometimes that's hard if you don't know what you're interested in. And that's okay. You can say that. You can say, I want to try things, but I want to be able to direct you harder, softer, longer, less, so that I can learn what I like and what I don't like. And that's fair. Like, you can do that. And nobody tells you that, right? Like, nobody says, hey, you don't have to know what your boundaries are right off the hop. I mean, how are you supposed to know? If you've never done bondage, how are you supposed to explain what kind of bondage you like? Right? If you've never had, I'll put in bunny ears, right? Rough sex, then how are you supposed to know what that means for you? Right? So it's totally okay to be like, I want to try gentle spanking to see what sensations I like, but no sex. No, I want to be able to focus on what my body likes with this. That's okay.
God,
and if somebody won't respect that,
Yeah.
I mean, and if somebody's like, well, no, if I'm not getting a blowjob, I'm not doing it. Don't worry. There's a million of us out there that would love to help you figure out what sensations you like without expecting you to give us things you don't want to give. You know, and that fear of missing out, I think, drives a lot of people to not setting boundaries.
Fear of missing out drives people to not set. I see what you mean. Yeah. Oh my God, I had a thought and I completely lost it. It's like, I'm just picturing like you really have to trust that just figuring out what your boundaries are. Like, I'm just picturing novice person. I'll use myself as an example. Novice Sabrina walks into a sex club and is like, I'm interested, but like.
Okay, so let's do that. So you walk into our club and I'm there and you're talking to me and you're like, I'm interested. So like, what exactly interests you? And you can make it up. You don't have to be super cool.
No, I'll talk about myself. Like
so when you think about spanking, like, are you thinking about the, oh no, I'm so sorry kind of playful spanking? Are you thinking about being able to just lay there and bask in these different sensations until your mind is like just a big mess? Are you thinking about having so much sensation that you have to actually give yourself to that sensation and able to deal with it, because those are three different things. I see your eyes and I'm like, all three?
I mean, like off the bat, I don't want you to make fun of me. I know you never would.
Mm-mm.
The first one sounds so playful. Like it's just, that's
erotic spanking.
Oh,
that's what I call erotic spanking. Some people call it, like some people are like, oh, I do domestic discipline, but it's so eroticized and so not about punishment. You know, it's more about punishment. Right?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because punishment sounds cool.
5 minutes late. Get to your room. You know what I mean? It's like, right? Oh no! Don't be mad, right? And that's fun. And I think so that's the kind of conversation that an experienced player should be having with an inexperienced player. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, when I describe these things, which one makes you feel tingly in all the right places? Because that's what you want to explore. Because otherwise, I'm going to throw you on a bench and just start grabbing implements and seeing how hard you can take things. And that's not the scene you're looking for. Yeah. You know, so I'm not going to be happy because I'm not getting that biofeedback that's so yummy. Yeah. You know, and you're definitely not going to be happy. So that conversation has to happen. So it's like, I'm curious. Yeah. I want to explore. I don't know where to start. Right?
It's like, I want to role play again. So if I go to you and I say, this is, okay, novice walks into a club, Sabrina walks into a club, Angel's there, I want to try this. You're like, do you want this one, or this one? Very sensual, you know, like,
I thought that was sensual.
Yeah. Especially the third one. I was like, well, which one do I want? So I go, you know what? The first one sounds great. And you're like, great. Okay, so let's go and explore that.
No. That is not enough information. Yeah. Right? So now, like, I need you to know that you can set boundaries on how nude or unnude you are. So even when you're doing really sexual things, right? So you can be like, you know, Angel, like for me, I would be like, hey, Sabrina, like we can do this a lot of different ways. So when you picture this, like, are you over my knee? Do I have you bent over a bed? Are you you know, in your underwear? Are you wearing pants? Do you have a skirt I flip up? Do I pull down your panties? Like describe the magic for me that happened in your brain when I was describing that, so I know where to go. And there's no wrong answers, right? And then once we start doing things, once we establish what those limitations, those interests are, right? Like, so say, you know, you're like, well, I'd like to keep my clothes on, but maybe a skirt so you could flip it up because that's like hot, right? Yeah. Like that's just hot. That vulnerability is hot. And that's part of the fun of BDSM is that vulnerability, right? Yeah. You get to be vulnerable without actually, well, ideally, without actually taking any risks. So that's like super cool, right? Yeah. But then, you know, also, like, how about sexual contact, right? Like, because that's a very erogenous zone. And there's like a little heart shape if you're looking at a bent over butt, right? Where you've got your butt cheeks coming down to the groin. And that's the sweet spot, just barely on the thighs and that heart shape on the butt. But that means there is going to be impact across the groin, right? Across the vulva if you're someone with a vulva, or across the perineum and stimulating the testicles if you're somebody with testicles. Yeah. And like, do I need to be careful of that? Do you want to cross your legs to protect that? Do you need to get, like, you know, and you're going to probably get wet, and I want you to know that's okay, but we're not fluid bonded. So if we're doing nudity, you know what I mean? And
all those terms are coming back to me. Fluid bonded. Right? Yeah. Oh my God. You're going to have to explain a lot of those things too, though. Okay.
Right. So like, I'm not in a relationship with you where we've gone and done the STI testing and we're monogamous and we've agreed we no longer have to use barriers. Right. Yeah. Like we're not, that's fluid bonded. When you have made the choice to exchange fluids with somebody, right? And you're comfortable with that, that's a fluid bonding. You're sharing sexual fluids. We don't have that relationship. Right. So I don't really want your fluids on me, but I want you to feel free to be aroused. Yeah. So I might put a glove on. Is that going to bother you? Right. like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then maybe you're like, I don't want you touching me, but I'd really like to use my own toy to
Yeah.
stimulate me while you're doing this. Then we need to talk about what that looks like, right? And then once things start and you have all these rules in place, right? So say you've said like no sexual contact, yes to being bottom nude. And I get that there's going to be incidental contact, but no like rubbing down my vulva or whatever,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
I want to feel like this is about spanking and not be worried that you might take advantage of me. Awesome.
Right.
I can do that.
Yeah.
So we're doing our thing and you're nude and bottom nude like you'd asked, and you start to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so you say yellow, and I go, what's going on? Because yellow is caution, check in with me,
Yeah.
Whatever, right? So you always check in if somebody uses a safe word aside from green. If somebody uses green, that's like, quit bothering me and just do your things. I'm really happy, right? And, like it's, go, go, go. And if you're bratty, it can be, I can't tell you're there. Go harder, So like you have to know your person. But yellow is a check-in. Right?
Yeah.
Just like a light, when you're approaching a yellow light, you look at the intersection before you zoom through it, ideally.
Yeah.
We want to do the same thing. And you say, I'm not comfortable nude, I want to put my clothing back on. Well, that's not what we negotiated. However, it reduces the vulnerability, so therefore that's allowed. If the other way around, if you had said, I want to keep my bottoms on, and then halfway through, even if you say, I'd like you to take my bottoms off.
I see. Yeah.
And I do, I am actually breaking trust because we are increasing your vulnerability mid-scene when endorphins are flying. It's kind of like being drunk, right?
So if you're doing all this and I'm like, okay, Angel, take your shirt off. And you're like, okay, are you saying that that's like, you shouldn't be doing that, or
you should not be doing that?
Should not.
And I get, like with my partner, we have an established relationship. We have a certain amount of understanding of each other's boundaries that you're not going to have with a new person. So we might negotiate something and then add something mid-scene, because we would only add things that we know are in those green light profiles, right?
Right.
So you wouldn't surprise me with extra partners in the middle of a scene, for example, because that's not our typical, it's not our typical playtime. So, but anything that's on our go list, he could add, because we have established that with each other. We've talked about it. And when things go wrong, we know we can work that out. But with you and I, we've never done any of these things together.
Yeah.
So if halfway through you're like, I just want to see you naked, it's okay that you said that.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't happen, because we can always do that next time. Right?
Okay. It's almost like
we want to stay within that green Venn circle of the things that we both agreed were going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to add anything in there.
Yeah.
We can remove things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like maybe you just don't find rapport with me and you're like, no, I don't want to use my toy. Like this is fine the way it is. And that's okay. So for me to go, well, you said you were gonna, you've revoked consent for that, and that's okay.
I guess I can see it, not that I'm challenging consent, like I can see it that way, that it's like, you said you were gonna take your pants off, Sabrina, not like, I'd be like, what the fuck, like, no. But if I'm like, hey, take your pants, no. I'm like, hey, take your pants off. Way. Yeah.
I can phrase this differently for you. Okay, so I'm an experienced BDSMer, and you're not. So you come to me because you think that you're safer with me because I know what I'm doing. We sit down and we negotiate all these things, okay? And so you have a very clear expectation of what's going to happen. So in the middle of this spanking, with your mind so intoxicated with the stuff that's going on, probably it's a public dungeon, might be the first time you've had people watching you and they all look so glowy and happy. So you're glowy and happy. Most of them know who I am. I'm a leader in my community. So there's that pressure too, right? Yeah. And you're like, you're feeling that I'm at a concert and I'm going to throw my bra at the band guys sort of thing, right? And so you're like, you're in a performing state and you're vulnerable because you're intoxicated.
Yeah.
So even if you're like, oh my God, do me, take off your clothes, take off my clothes, I really want these things. If I was to do that, I am taking advantage of your state. right? And you went into this with this expectation, all I'm doing is spanking. And all of a sudden there's nudity. And then afterwards you get to gaslight yourself because you're like, well, I asked Angel to take off their shirt, right? And so I don't know why I feel weird about it. But you are going to have that little weird feeling because when we sat down and talked, this is what we agreed to.
Yeah.
And I told you nothing would happen that we didn't agree to.
Yeah.
And mid-scene, even though you're the one that asked for it, I, the person in charge of the scene, allowed more things to be added.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a break of trust. So then next time, are you going to want to set boundaries at all? Because I didn't adhere to them. So what was the point of that?
Wow. No, it's like, I think what people maybe find confusing is like this heat of the moment stuff that you're talking about. Like you're about to throw your bra on the stage and like, oh, damn it, I'm going to do it. Like, it's not like that. I keep picturing the same scene where like newbie walks into a club and I'm like, hey, like somebody, like I would like to talk to somebody about this. I'm thinking of like do's and don'ts. And what would be a red flag for somebody like me or somebody, a novice, is like that if I'm like...
That should be a red flag. Even if you ask for it as the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Even if you ask for it as the bottom, it is the top's responsibility to maintain the boundaries that were set in the negotiation. So even if... And I've had this happen. So I've reached out, like back when I was looking for a spanking partner... I had an ad up and I had a lot of really wonderful spankers respond, which was lovely. And I had one individual and I was like really clear, right? This is not sex. I only want the spanking. And if you don't enjoy spanking people as much as I enjoy being spanked, then we have nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
Like I'm not interested in giving or getting oral sex. I don't want you penetrating me. And I was pretty blunt. And they always wait until you're hot and squirmy and feeling good. And then they're like, do you want it? And as soon as you ask, I now know. Yeah, I heard your gasp, right? And it's like, I now...
Well, now I know that that's wrong. Yeah.
There's a power exchange. So your top, like when you negotiate, there's no power exchange. You and I are equals. Once you're over my knee, not so much.
Yeah.
Right? Once I have you on a spanking bench with your pants down or your skirt up, not so much. Yeah. And there's a power exchange that happens there. Yeah. And part of that exchange is you say with your energy, for lack of a better word, you go, Angel, I'm trusting you with this vulnerability to make this a positive experience.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I'm trusting you to tell me if you need me to back away. Yeah. So that trust has to flow in both directions. And it is normal when you're high to want more, even though you know it's not good for you.
There's, you had one of these readings you posted for our unit, characteristics of a dom and characteristics of a sub, personality traits. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
And then like, it's, I remember doms were like desire for control, extroversion, self-esteem, life satisfaction, submissives, but I can't even remember what they were, but it was like, there was a lot of...
We need to add to that. Like we need to update that because we assumed when we added that to the readings that there would be a discussion about the stereotypes.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have to add to it. You're supposed to want to discuss that because I'll tell you, I'm a switch.
I was going to say this.
As a switch, as a person who tops and bottoms, where should my traits be?
What I found interesting about it was that I did find that there were some stereotypes there. And does everybody fit like that? Because somebody who wants to be spanked, somebody who wants to be submissive, has high self-esteem. They just want to lose control. Like they just, and they have.
And that was the point of the list is that it makes these gendered assumptions.
Yes.
And if you look at that list, all the things on the submissive list are the traits that we typically assign to women because we view women as infantile and less than and, all these things. And all the dominant traits are those that we assign to men. And or at least value in men that we don't value in women.
Yes,
might be more
yeah,
accurate,
I would say,
right?
yeah.
Like if a woman has those traits, it devalues them, and if a man has those traits, it adds value to him, and that's it's one of those things that when we come in and do the live talks at the U of A that we talk about, it's like, so my partner is incredibly gentle.
Yeah, he sounded really nice.
You would never have anybody respect your boundaries the way he does while making you beg for mercy.
Oh my
He's
God.
a complete sadist.
Yeah.
But for him, the joy in that sadism comes from knowing that you are enjoying your masochism.
Yeah.
Right? So it becomes this loop. And even though we're really well matched that way, it's also one of those things where if he wasn't so ethical, it could put us in a lot of trouble. Because when I'm exploring my masochistic side with someone you trust, those boundaries get really fuzzy. Like you're like, oh, I don't really want to do that. And then, you have this other scene with them and you're like, I would actually trust them to explore that thing that made me nervous.
Yeah.
And then so like you have to, as the top, he has to constantly be considering if this is actually safe to do.
See, I wish that's something that people could understand, that there's a lot of control. There's a lot, controlling yourself, a lot of boundaries, a lot of constant checking in, consent. Like, I think that my impressions, and I can say this really openly, like when he started talking and he was like, I'm a dom and I'm a state, like it was almost scary. You're almost like, ooh. And he does say, like, I was raised to like never hit a woman. I was raised with these same things. And that like, he kind of put it out there like that. And then I guess I don't even know if I'm what I'm trying to say, if I'm saying it properly, is that like, I instinctively was almost scared of him. And then the more that he's talking, the more I'm like, oh my God, there's like so much empathy,
gentleness,
like
passion, and
it's almost exhausting. Like how much he has to check
really
in.
funny because he's very pragmatic. He calls it pragmatic. I call it pessimistic. Okay. He's like one of those people who's like, the world's fucked, like all this stuff, right? And I don't disagree, but I have more optimism. I still think we can fix things, and yet he is so full of love. Yeah, like he just. And he can give that in a scene with a stranger. Yeah. And that just makes my heart feel good. Like, I actually really like watching him top because I can watch him maintain control while allowing himself to feel all that pleasure. Yeah. Because keeping that person safe means a lot to him. Yeah. You know what I mean?
See that being so hot.
It is so hot. And like having somebody, hovering with their body an inch over yours going, you sure you want to do this? And I try to explain this to people, like even when we talk about consent and sex, right? Yeah. Like if you're checking in, I'm going to do a rude gesture here, but you don't do this and then go, hey, do you need me to stop? Yeah, you do this. And you go, are you okay? That's hot.
She just did the finger in a whole thing I'm like for people not watching.
And that's like, and you have to actually stop when you do that. And as somebody assigned female at birth, the millions of times people have gone, are you okay? While still doing the thing, making it very clear that they expect that answer to be yes, which makes it unsafe to say no. Yeah. You know what like there's a level. It's like if I have my arms out, I'm like, do you want a hug? Like, of course you're going to say yes. Yeah. Or feel really uncomfortable while you tell me no. Yeah. Whereas if I'm hands down and my language with my body matches my voice, nice and calm, and I go, hey, like, are you a hugger? Sanitary elbow bump, like what works for you? Yeah. Then you're going to feel free setting a boundary. Yeah. In a way that you're not. If I'm like, and it's the same thing with kink, with BDSM. And those qualities that we're looking at, like the whole point is this is the trope, right? This is what porn bases BDSM on. This is what we saw in 50 Shades of Grey. Okay. There's not only that, she's a virgin, so like and she's poor and he's wealthy. And like, there's all these power differences. And I'm like, no.
She's a virgin. I never read it or watched it. It's not that I didn't have an interest in BDSM. I don't know. I bought the book. I read the first 2 or 3 chapters and just kind of like me. It just didn't get me, so I
It's
just paused
really
it.
hot if you pretend that they negotiated to role play this.
Yeah.
Then it's really hot.
So you're
Yeah.
saying, as a kink, professional and somebody who participates in BDSM, it doesn't have a BDSM stamp of approval. Like you
No.
don't nothing.
So 2 things I'll say about 50 Shades of Grey. I'm grateful that millions of people watched it because it brought that conversation to the forefront, and it's made it so folk like you,
Yeah.
were able to access information about the kink community because everybody's talking about kink now.
Yeah.
2, nothing in that one, that girl's not a kinkster.
Okay.
I don't know who the hell she got her information from, but it's not somebody who understands consent or masochism.
Are you talking about the character? Or are you talking about the writer?
The writer.
Oh, okay. What the heck was her name? I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. She was writing porn, and that's great. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm happy for her that she made all that money. But he gives her shit for following her safe word. He doesn't walk what he preaches. He never does anything to make sure she feels free to consent, and he coerces her the whole way. And they pulled out the trope of he was, in a unethical relationship as a teenager, and that's why he's all fucked up. And it's
that's unfortunate. I didn't know any of that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. I'm just like, what? And even the tracks that he uses in the ceiling for dragging her around his dungeon, it's just not even viable. So like, there's a lot of fantasy in there, and that's great. It's fantasy.
Yeah.
But when we look at actual kink, there's 2 ways you can do kink: consensually or not. And if you're doing it without consent, you're assaulting someone. Like, done deal. Do you know what I mean? Like, that consent has to be there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay, there's a couple of things I want to say. We've been talking for 40 minutes. Like, holy moly. I try to keep it around an hour or so.
Started yet.
I feel like there's so many things I want to ask you, so many things I want to bring up. How do you know if you're a dom, and how do you know if you're a sub, and like, can you play around with that? Like you said, you're a switch, so can you play around with that in a scene? Like, if you're in the club and you're like, I want to be spanked. Damn it, I want to spank this one. But like, you can't just spontaneously do that, is how I'm reading this. Because of consent. Like, I have to, if I'm like spank, and then I'm like, hey, can I spank you? You're like, no thanks, I'm not into that.
Okay. So let's follow that. So we're experimenting because you've asked to experiment. You want to experience a spanking. We're doing the things, and then you're like, yellow. I check in, and you're like, I want to spank you now. Yeah. So we can stop what we're doing and talk about what that would look like,
right?
And then do that. Like, we're grown-ups. We can decide to negotiate. What we can't do is wait until someone's vulnerable and add stuff on.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
So we stop what we're doing and we talk like 2 adults, like we are, right? About what we want to do. We negotiate for that, and then we do that.
Yeah.
So now, if I waited until you were hot and bothered and said, now you have to spank me, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you see the difference? Like, we want to negotiate when we're both clothes on, when we're not doing the activity, when there's no power exchange involved. So even with my partner, we don't talk as, daddy dom and whatever. Like, we don't do that. We talk as Mark and Angel.
Yeah.
We decide what we're going to do, and then that's what we do. Right? Yeah. Like, you can't be in a power exchange while you're negotiating.
I wonder if, like, again, because I've never been to like a BDSM club, not like, if I were to go in and oh my God, I assume people, let's say I walk into a live, can I even do that? Can I just walk into a sex club or a BDSM club and people are doing it?
It depends on the club.
Yep. So if it's happening and I go, do I just go like, hey, can I talk to the person in charge? Like,
absolutely.
Okay, and there's a hierarchy, right?
We encourage this. So, well, I wouldn't say there's a hierarchy, but there's always somebody who's in charge of the event, and it might be a team. There might be like 4 or 5 people in charge of the event. At our events, we typically have a host and a co-host and the person at the desk, and we'll point out all the volunteers that are there.
Wow.
So I'll be like, maybe I'm hosting and maybe Mark's my co-host. And then it's like, we've got Violet, we've got Ashton, we've got Veronica. If you have any problems tonight, those are the people you reach out to. Right? Okay, so even at the desk, when you're coming in, because you got to show ID, pay, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when you come in, you can say, I'm brand new. I would like to talk to somebody about how to navigate this safely. and they should be able to tell you who to talk to and take you to them. Like, absolutely. And if they don't, if they're like, oh, new meat, run.
I'm scared.
You know,
Oh
like, run.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, take the money back, walk out the door. And some of the best groups out there, when you go on their websites, you can find their rules. Right?
Okay. There was one more thing I wanted to say. Can I watch? Is that allowed? If I go, hey, I'm new, can I just see?
Typically. So a lot of the spaces, the way they have it set up is there's a social area where you can chat and, you know, and do whatever. And you're not supposed to bug anybody in the social area if they're wrapped up in blankets, because they're probably doing aftercare. But for the most part, you can, you know, be loud and whatever in the social area. And then there's the play area. And when you walk into the play area, there's usually dungeon equipment. Typically around the outside. If it's a big space, there might be a few things set up on the like in the middle of the space, but typically around the boundary of the space is where all the equipment is set up. Mm-hmm. And people walk around from station to station watching people play. The deal is you don't get close enough that you can touch someone, right? Yeah. And I'm going to model this while I'm talking, but when you're looking at someone, you want to be like, hey, I see that person and that's really cool, and kind of let your eyes look away. You don't want to be like watching them like, and then when they make eye contact with you, they feel like they're masturbating because that's creepy, right? That's creepy. So, but yeah, you can watch. What you don't want to do is interrupt.
Oh, I wouldn't dream of it. Like,
people do. People do. But I'm just saying, like, for all our newbies out there, if you go to a dungeon you're watching, even if you see something super cool, you don't want to be like, oh my God, where'd you get that flogger? Does that feel good? That's because you are basically jumping into their bed while they're having sex, going, tell me all about it. And that's awkward as fuck, right? And you're going to see things that you really don't like. And that's okay. Not everything is for everybody. You just walk away to a different space. If you're really concerned about something you see in a dungeon, you go and you talk to the people who are the DMs, dungeon monitors, not dungeon masters.
Oh, I say dungeon master.
Oh, do you? Dungeon master is for AD&D or 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing.
Oh, you know what? My boyfriend plays Dungeons and Dragons. I mixed up the two.
And a DM is a dungeon monitor. They're your safety person that walks around. They're like little hosts, right? They walk around making sure that you've got the things you need. Yeah. And typically there'll be a little chat at the beginning for all the newbies where they'll give you the rules and tell you how to find the DMs and explain that the DM's word is law, which it's not actual law.
I thought it was. Like what I remember reading, I thought what I remembered reading from some of the readings anyways, I'm trying to think if Beducated said the same thing, because Dungeon Monitors comes up a lot.
Yeah, and that so they're the law of the club. It's not the legal law, right?
No, of course I don't think it's legal.
I was just cracking a joke because I'm really spectrum and, you know, I'm very literal, but yeah.
No, sorry.
And they're usually easy to find. Like they're usually, I know... Out here in Alberta, in the older clubs, they wear those construction vests. Ours, they have the great big white button with a spanking icon on it, so pretty easy to find them. You know what I mean? And they're also the one that's walking around going, do you need water? Do you have your scissors? You know what I mean? Yeah. So pretty easy to tell who's in charge. Yeah. Like I said, you just ask at the desk. Yeah. And in Vancouver, they wear beauty sashes. Like from pageants, really makes them really easy to find. But yeah, it's something else. I really recommend that you check out a club. Yeah, and your partner, even and you can just say we're curious, we're new. It's a great way to start the conversation. Like, honey, I was reading an article about how 50 Shades of Grey doesn't represent the kink community, and there's apparently a public play party that we can go to. Like, can we go? Like, we don't have to do anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, let's agree that the first time we're not going to do anything there. We'll just go watch and get a feel for it and see if anything interests us. You know what I mean?
I feel like I 180'd on my ideas about BDSM in this class. And then also Beducated too, just learning so much about, if somebody were to have told me in the past, you know, I'm a BDSM dom dungeon monitor, like, and in the way that Mark, your partner, was like talking about, like, I'm a dom and this and say, I was like instinctively kind of scared when that lecture was done and that unit was done. Like, let me tell you how many of my friends I was talking about it to them. Like, I have a completely different impression. And if
He's
you're
got a
gonna,
fan club.
yeah, like, it doesn't surprise how much control, compassion, empathy. It's almost like you're a counselor. Like, you're like,
Absolutely.
there's two things I want to bring up because, like, oh my gosh, it's almost an hour. Maybe we'll do a part 2 or even a part 3 because I have an idea for something. Because I have this idea for, like, Sabrina walks into a club, meets Angel and maybe even Mark, and we like role play what a proper.
Oh, we need to bring you out here.
I would love to.
We actually do an event here in Alberta called Taste of Kink that's designed for newbies. And
okay.
you are allowed to ask questions and interrupt. And not only that, but we have volunteers who are trained. They've had a police background screening done.
Yeah.
We train them in consent. And they man these different stations. So you go up to the spanking station. They're like, hi, were you looking to try? And is it that you want to be spanked, or do you want to learn how to spank, or a little bit of both? Like, what are you...
Yeah.
And they won't do anything unless you're like, yes, I want to do the things. Yeah. So if your partner's like, oh, spank her, they'll be like, no, that's not how consent works. Yeah. Right? Like, I actually have to know that they really want the spanking. And if somebody's like, I guess, they're like, okay, well, if you decide you really want to, come back. There's just no pressure. You get to say whether you want to go harder, whether you want to go softer, what implements you want to use, and same with the rope station, same with the wax station. And you can say to somebody who's getting wax put on their arm, like, is that hot? Does it hurt? What does it feel like? Are you scared? You know what I mean? Like, like whatever. And it's an amazing event. Like, it's absolutely my favorite.
But it's in Alberta, and it's
in Alberta. It's the first Thursday of every other month and the third Sunday of the months in between.
Where in Alberta, though? Is it like hosted at
in Edmonton?
In Edmonton, okay. Am I wrong? I was reading somewhere that Edmonton has a really big kink community, really big BDSM community, one of the biggest.
Well, one of the biggest out communities. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why. Like, I was surprised to hear that. I guess I don't know.
I wasn't surprised. Anywhere you repress people, they're going to either be incredibly conservative in the way they do things.
Yeah.
Or when they start poking at that conservative shame, they're going to discover a lot of things.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Did people stop having sex during COVID? And I don't believe that they did. Like, I talked to a couple of people that work in public health, and they were like, no. It sounds like in the beginning they kind of slowed down. And then but like, people want to be together. That's tough to keep people apart. And then somebody who's into kink and BDSM and goes to these places, I was going to ask you, like, were people still doing this? Kinking it out during COVID?
So we actually handed out more condoms during COVID than we did before COVID.
So where, like, I guess, like, okay, this chart I keep looking at is what is your most practiced kink during COVID-19 lockdown. This is off kinkd.com. Number 1 is virtual sex, because I think, what the hell else were people going to do? But then dom sub is like number 2, bondage number 3, like role play, voyeurism, sadomasochism, 6, 7, and 8. Like, it's so popular. Like, it's so popular. And even if things shut down, people are finding a way.
In the middle of the AIDS epidemic, before we knew how to treat it, people were still having sex.
Of course.
Gay leather bars were still busy because it's one of the ways that we connect with each other. And for some people, BDSM is an alternative to sexual intercourse too. Yeah. So there's a lot of asexual people that really enjoy the kink community, because you can go, I want to experience sensation, but I don't really want to share your fluids. So people are still doing the things.
Aspect is a physical, like, community center that's like...
Yes and no. Okay. So we had a physical community center that we lost over COVID because we had no way to raise funds. However, the Aurora Social Club, which is a swingers club, has a gorgeous space downtown. Okay. And it's ours to use Sunday through to Friday noon. They use it Friday night, Saturday night. Otherwise, it's ours.
Okay, very cool.
We have to book it, and sometimes they book stuff, you know what I mean? But, like, and they don't charge Aspect for it.
Wow, that's so
So
nice.
yeah, they're pretty freaking incredible human beings. So Aurora Social Club, check them out.
But I also want to talk about educated. But anyways, they talked about aftercare, and I posted a TikTok about it because I think that this is something that everyone really needs to know, because there's so much. I don't want to say regular, like I'm doing air quotes, regular sex, normal sex,
Vanilla
whatever.
sex, muggle sex, whatever you
Muggle
want.
sex, exactly.
Non-kink
Perfect. But like, why can't people be practicing aftercare after just muggle sex? Or
They
like,
should be.
and they should be. And this is what I learned so much about BDSM is like these Oprah aha moments where you're describing the checking in and the setting boundaries and the are you okay and do you like this, and of course Beducated is saying these same things, and I'm like,
And not just in sex,
yeah,
but with other things too.
but in life,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you had a fight with your partner. There should be aftercare that happens. Like, let's talk about how we could have worked through this differently.
yeah.
Do you know what I
Of
mean?
course.
Let's remind each other that we love each other, and instead we just pretend the fight didn't happen. We have
Yeah.
sex, and then the next time we fight, we get to bring all that resentment forward.
Yeah.
So like aftercare is seriously, it's just a shortcut word for look after each other.
I know. You know, I was saying it to my partner. I'm like, this is just a fancy way of like nice pillow talk, like really nice, like, or like exploratory pillow talk, like something like that. Like, I guess in my mind when I was explaining it to my friends, like, this is what aftercare is, this is how it works. Some of them had that same feeling, like that's just snuggle talk, that's post-sex stuff.
Except it's like, deliberate.
But it
is.
Yes.
So intent means something. And I think it's the same thing with protocols, right?
Yeah.
Like that intent, when I bring you a cup of coffee every day and you know I'm doing that because that's my way of saying I love you, and you accepting it is saying I love you too, then I bring you the coffee and you and I exchange a look and we're like, we know what we're doing. And in that instant, all those warm fuzzies that you get from somebody going, look, I really love you. Like you are a whole person and you are enough, you know, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
And that, to me, aftercare is intention, right? We've made we've specifically said that after sex or an argument or kink or whatever, we're going to do X, Y, Z because we respect ourselves and one another. And we want to make sure that we have space without egos, with that glowy feeling, to connect as humans.
Yeah.
Not as people who had sex.
I know.
Just as humans. And I think that it's beautiful.
So beautiful.
You know? Before you wind down, I just want to show you these. Do you see them?
Yeah. It's a deck of cards BDSM, for everyone. Yeah.
This is the BDSM Safe, Sane, Consensual. Oh. There is like a shit ton of cards here, and they are all what is BDSM cards. So this one is like, what is a pseudo-dom? What does vanilla in the BDSM community mean? What is the difference between DS and sensual domination? Well, I make them.
Can I have them?
Can go. So if you go on the Aspect website, which is aspecc.ca, and just click shop, you will see the games. Yeah. We have these consent cards, ethical non-monogamy cards, like you name it.
Wow.
Yeah, and the money goes to sex education. So like you're having fun for a good cause.
I would like that, please.
Isn't that sexy?
Yeah.
I'll show you before you go and do your things. Like this is our sexual health trivia deck.
Oh,
so that's all sexual.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm gonna put that one in sideways so I don't mix them up. And then this one is the non-monogamy deck.
Oh wow. How do you have so much information?
Well, and that's why I started doing the decks, right? And then this one is a sex positive conversation deck.
Oh, I love it.
I love this one. So it's got stuff like, why do you think lingerie has been created mostly for feminine folk? If someone masculine enjoys wearing silk or lace, does that mean they're not masculine?
Ooh, I love it.
Right? Asian women are highly sexualized, while Asian men are viewed as less desirable. How is this part of sex negative culture? I'm just pulling random ones.
Right.
Something interesting you learned about sex that wasn't part of sex ed.
Oh my God, I love that question. Can I steal that question? What was something interesting you learned about sex?
Probably that you didn't learn in sex ed.
Something you learned about sex that you didn't learn in sex ed.
they come complete with spelling mistakes because I'm dyslexic. I edited them like 100 times, so I got to go back and edit them again. And then I have 2 really cool decks. These ones are the communication practice deck and the healthy relationships game. The communication practice deck has scenarios, and there's a person A and a person B.
That's interesting.
So it's a practice shitty situations with guidance, right? And then the healthy relationships game has the yellow, green, and red cards. And everybody gets a yellow, green, and a red card. And then you play one of these cards, read it out, and everybody puts their card upside down. So that you can't see what everybody's voting until everybody's voted. And so everybody plays their cards. And then you flip them all up, and then you get to have a conversation about what the norms were. It helps teach perspective.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna maybe grab a couple. I like the sex positive conversation starters.
And I have a podcast too.
Oh, perfect. What is it? I didn't know that.
Sex Talk. Yeah, and we talk about this stuff all the time. So I'll have to drag you on my podcast as well.
Please.
I'm on GTFO Radio, which is adult broadcasting. You should really do a show on there.
What? Get the fuck out. What is that?
Get the fuck on radio.
Oh my God, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's a Canadian internet broadcasting company, and they just picked up international licensing. So we actually had people listening in countries I had no idea were curious about the topics we were talking about.
Okay, I want to ask you something. I ask everybody because this is sex education for adults, and I didn't really learn about sex in school all that much. I mean, I unlearned a lot of it. My main source of sex education was movies. So I watch movies all day. And I would like to know what your favorite movie sex scene is. Or do you have a favorite childhood movie sex scene? And then like a favorite adult one? What's the hottest thing?
You're gonna laugh because the one that always stuck with me, and I don't remember what movie it was, but there's this movie and it's intended for teen viewing, and the girl has her first vibrator and she goes and she lays on the bathroom floor. And you don't get to see her using the vibrator, but they show the vibrator, and then she's like on the floor, and she's like, like, and then curious, and then like, and eyes widen, and she has an orgasm, and the only reason you know that is because they break off to like music that's like screaming, like right? And I was like, it is the first time I had ever seen anything that gave the indication that somebody with a vagina could have pleasure from sexual stimulation. Because normally they just start you off with like the James Bond crap, right?
Yeah.
Where he just kisses her and she's fighting him, and then all of a sudden she's not fighting him, and like that's...
And she's just moaning in ecstasy. You're like, well, I don't understand what's going on. What's the name of that movie, though? Do you have any idea?
No idea.
Can you ballpark the year? Because I can usually find them. People sometimes come in with like, there was a boat and a guy, and the guy was wearing a hat.
Late 80s, early 90s.
Was it a comedy?
No, it was like a rom-com, I think.
She's using a vibrator on the floor, has an orgasm.
She's a teenager.
Why can't I think of it? I'm usually really good at these things.
Because she's living at home. Like, I'm pretty sure she's living at home.
Do you know who the actress is? Or what
it could have been a freaking toothbrush, for all I know, like an electric toothbrush.
See, you're saying electric toothbrush, and I can't even remember what show it is, Georgia and Ginny or something, where a girl's brushing her teeth with an electric toothbrush, and then she just kind of like looks at it and then like uses it. But that's a new show on Netflix that came out like last year. And I remember being like, if I had seen that as a kid, it would have saved me a lot of grief. I would have figured out how to do stuff because it's such trial and error. You're like, everything's supposed to feel good, right? You have like no idea.
Yeah, I'm looking. I don't. For some reason, I want to think it's like 16 Candles or like in that genre.
Oh, okay. Maybe I want to do a dig, and then I'll message you later if I find it.
If you can find it, I would love to know, because I always found the sex scenes really uncomfortable in movies because they're so coercive. I'm a survivor of child sexual assault, so like seeing stuff like that just made it feel like this is all there is in the world. You know what I mean?
If the better question is what's a really positive sex scene and I guess you've named this one because there's female pleasure, or like who's getting it right, or is there even
The
is there
Netflix series Sex Education.
They're getting it right. I think they're
Oh
really getting it right.
God.
All the checking in and the consent. I'm living for it.
And even the fact that even though she's a sex therapist,
Yeah,
she's making mistakes and owning it. And when he makes mistakes, she overreacts to it and then has to come back and fix it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's such a lovable character.
Otis?
You know? But he goes through like such a shit time with that one person when he's trying to be all studly man. And you're just like, oh, come on, Otis. Like, he can do better. And he does. He gets through it. But, like, they really highlight that identity crisis that we go through that impacts the way we interact sexually as teenagers and young adults. Yeah. And, but, yeah, they've got even the sex scene where that one girl, I can't even remember what her name is, but she's having sex with that guy. And she's like, whatever, I'll finish on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm bad at sex, right? And it's like, and he's so wounded, and she's just like, nope, she's no truck with it, like not my problem. And I was like, that's representations people need now, because you know what? If you can't listen to me when I tell you what works for my body, it's not my problem to protect you. Yeah,
like,
you know, like
I never saw anything like that growing up. I never saw women wanting sex, liking it, being direct. I feel like it could have changed things.
One of my favorite movies as a kid was Dirty Dancing.
Oh God, I love it so much.
It was because she was such a loner and she managed to find her way. But at the same time, she only found her way because some womanizer noticed her and spent time on her. So like, even as I got older, I was like, I just so tired of this rescue mentality and the infantilizing of women. Like, I'm over it. Yeah. You know, and now that I have such a clear sex positive view of consent and sex and relationships. Yeah. And ableism and racism, TV's hard. It is really hard. Yeah. I can't find shows that I can really enjoy.
This is a whole other episode in of itself. I'd love to do like a sex and TV, sex and movies, sex and music video. Jesus Christ, like how that my come to Jesus sexual awakening really was like music videos. Angel, this was amazing. I feel like part 2, 3 is coming. I'd love to have you back if you'd love to come back.
I would love to.
I learned a ton. I can't wait for this to like go up. I learned so much. I learned so much for you in the school, in the program. And again, you did it again. So thanks so much. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, I've loved it. Thank you for having me. This has been incredible. I'll talk to you anytime.
Oh, perfect. I want to thank Beducated again for being the sponsor of this show. Use the After Sex Ed coupon code to receive 1 day totally for free and 65% off. I think for the year or for a lifetime, but it's a great offer. I'll send it to you, Angel, as well, so you can have a snoop through the courses and see what you think about the BDSM stuff, because I thought they really nailed it. I thought they did a really great job. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.